Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Jerry Miller. Welcome to What's Barking Local, this show powered by Animal Connection and McIntyre Plaza. 18 plus years and counting. The hard work, the sweat equity, and the vision of Patty Boden Zeller, the businesswoman behind Animal Connection. Also, the visionary behind Dogfest and this program, What's Barking Local. Judah Wickhauer, you're our director. Why don't we start with the two-shot? And let's welcome Patty to the show. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. You?
Where's winter?
It feels like spring.
I know. They're daffodils up.
They are. What does that do for your allergies?
My allergies?
Nothing?
They're okay. Sales of dogs' coats and sweaters, not so much.
I think we're going to get winter back, though. I see snow in the forecast this weekend.
Doesn't that figure? We're supposed to go to Eastern Shore, Maryland this weekend and paddle. Yeah, let's go paddle in the snow. Sounds like a great idea.
Charlottesville weather being a little bipolar. But that doesn't stop you from some big-time things, including a photo shoot on the horizon.
A what?
A photo shoot.
Ah, yes, this is true. What?
Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's right. I had to think about it. Photo shoot. What this time? Yeah, we've got some cool things coming up. First of all, I'm going to mention that if you're online Friday morning, I'm going to be on a podcast. It's called The Groomer Next Door, a.k.a. The Flea Circus. And they're on Facebook, and they're also on iTunes. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I'm sure we're going to talk about retail and business and what makes Animal Connection go forward. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we are working ahead towards February. Our great friend Erica Proctor and Green Dogs Unleashed. Well, don't you know they had 2 dogs drive up to New York to be on the Animal Planet Puppy Bowl.
That's amazing.
How about that? 2 Great Danes.
You kind of teased it without spoiling it
last week. That's right.
Week.
I had to hold on until the pictures were released. So we're having a party. We're having a watch party over at 3 Notched in the tent. They're going to set us up with a popcorn bar with fixins and chips and salsa, and you can also order food off the menu and, of course, buy their wonderful beverages. And we're going to have a taco bar for the dogs and make some nachos for them and some goodies, and it's going to be really fun. It's going to be on the February 2nd, starting at 2 o'clock, and you can bring your dog. If your dog's well behaved, and they might be better behaved after this show, you can bring your dog. That's going to be super fun. And then following that, the weekend before Valentine's Day on the 9th, the fabulous Miette Michi and Pedography CVille are going to be coming to Animal Connection with a beautiful setup of Valentine's theme, so your dog can be a centerfold or sweetheart or whatever you want. But anyway, you can sign up for really cool pictures.
I love it. Yay. I love it. So first quarter, we're chugging along.
Yep.
A lot of activity on the hopper and the horizon.
Oh my God, yes.
We have, of course, the self-serve dog wash.
Yep.
A ton of
very
grooming.
Busy. Mm-hmm.
Very busy.
Right.
Now, what we're trying to do, and this is your vision for the show, is to offer educational and approachable content.
Exactly.
And today's program embodies those qualities.
Exactly. So, we hear a lot of people that have either received a new puppy for Christmas, or they thought about adopting a dog and brought it into their family over the holidays, and now we're getting a lot of what next? What do we do? So we want to talk with 2 of Charlottesville's expert pet trainers, and let's ask some questions. What should a family expect that their dog needs to learn? So we have Heather Chavez, who's been here on the show before. She owns Lead the Way Canine Training. And then we have the new kid on the block.
Well, the new kid on this block.
That's right, on the show.
In the Charlottesville
Yeah. Deven Gaston owns Canine Campus, the Howled halls of dog training. And she's, how many years have you been in Charlottesville?
I've been in Charlottesville personally, I think 22.
Okay.
And Canine Campus has been here for 17.
Right, that's a long time. So both of these ladies are here and ready to take questions about dog training, and let's get busy.
Put the questions in any of the comments section of the 12 Facebook pages you're watching. A couple questions coming in here already. Before we get to the questions, why don't we introduce everyone to Deven. Heather, we will have you reintroduce yourself. Your first time here.
Yes.
Give us what makes you tick, the passions, the hobbies, and the interests.
Let's see. I obviously dogs to be in the business that I'm in, but I started out as actually a corporate software instructor.
Yeah.
Boy, yin and yang.
I would never have guessed that.
Yeah. So teaching people to kind of work with things that make them uncomfortable and potentially scare them was how I started. And it was welcoming a husky mix into my home that sort of redirected my career. And fortunately, I have an amazing vet who also specializes in behavior, and she was the one that recommended that I shift careers, and she's been an amazing mentor to me throughout my entire training career. And so I spent as a small business owner, and Patty, I know you can attest to this, and Heather as well. That's pretty much your life. It doesn't matter if you have other interests at this point in time. If you're going to be a small business, right? This is
I know the feeling.
Taken up your whole life. So I would love to. I love to travel. I don't get to do that enough, but I got back from Ireland a few months ago. That was fun.
All right.
So that's in a nutshell where I'm at.
I love it. Heather, jump in the mix.
Yep.
Give us a little snapshot of yourself.
My hobbies, like I said, what are hobbies? Who has time for those? But no, small business. It kind of takes up your whole life. It's definitely not a 9 to 5, but we really love it. Helping the families in Charlottesville with their dogs, new puppies, adopted older dogs. We have 3 trainers now on staff, and we offer different programs, private lessons in your home. We have a new day training program that we've kind of revamped where trainer comes out a couple times a week, works with your dog, and then at the end of the week works with you. So it's kind of like a mini board and train with the benefit that your dog doesn't actually have to leave your house. And then we do have a board and train program, which is great for people that are going to travel anyway, or if they have a dog that they're just a little bit overwhelmed with, or they just want the Rolls Royce of dog training. They're going to get a lot of daily attention and a lot of training. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Isn't it interesting how family pets inspire a new business? I mean, with both of them, with me, with my buddy Nancy Gwynn, her line is it started with a bulldog, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how the animals can. I don't think Max and Leo inspired your business, but they probably helped.
Max and Leo helped me decompress from my business.
There
Our
you go.
German
That's
Shepherds, Max and Leo. Throw this to you. I'm very interested in kind of the trials and tribulations of the business. When did you realize you kind of had a company?
That sort of tipping point is always interesting, right? So, the first few group classes that I ran had a lot of my friends and family in them, right? So you get off the ground and run in that way. And then word starts to spread. I think that because I'm really interested in the scientific aspects and the underlying mechanisms of behavior change, when you start working with people who are incredibly talented and way more experienced than you are and have PhDs in this and have dedicated their life to research and study, and you come back and you sort of see it spark the people that you've been either doing private consultations with or group classes,
right.
You're onto something. It's packaging it in a way that works for people, and that does take trial and error. When we first started, we just had group classes and private lessons. We did not have training camp, which is our version of daycare. It's a very structured, small daycare. And then the recession hit, and I thought, I'm going to go out of business.
Oh, boy.
we literally started, it was called Fridays with Friends, and it was our training camp, and it was 1 day a week, and I opened it at 7:30, then closed it at 6:30, and then taught classes. And then that expanded to Woofing Wednesdays and Fridays with Friends. And then, so as demand, I did not sort of open it up and sort of wait to see who came as demand grew. But when I had to change facilities, so after 3 years, I moved from the old volunteer firehouse in Earlysville to what is now Pet Paradise. But when Susan built that training facility next door, it was actually sitting dormant for a number of years when they sold the business. And so I took over that. And that's when I realized I had an indoor facility before, but I was kind of running camp inside and outside. And so now I felt like I was very much like, this is it. I have this large space. I can easily fill this space. I can afford to fill this space. That's when I think I realized that I knew that was going to be a change that was either going to make me or break me. I was either going to get bigger or fall apart.
Yeah, that tipping point thing is I can remember when I was selling dog food out of my garage or through freezer, it was like, psst, I got dog food in the garage, and put it in people's cars, and then you need a retail space. So, yeah.
It's a
a big thing.
perfect community for
Right.
what you do.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Charlottesville's great.
55? I read a stat about this. I think it's 55% of houses in Central Virginia have a dog.
I believe it.
That's a big number.
This is definitely a really dog friendly and dog as a family member central kind of part. The community is just great here. I come from Massachusetts, Boston, and Boston's kind of like that, but I definitely think it's a little bit more dog friendly here. And yeah, I mean, just the vast variety of people. Some days I work with undergrads, right in the downtown, and then other times I'm, a couple miles outside of town working on a farm because the dog won't start chasing the horses. So every day is different, and that's something I really enjoyed. Coming to Charlottesville is just the variety of people, the different types of dogs, and the different kind of lifestyles. But everyone still loves their dogs, whatever the lifestyle is. The dog is still so much a part of their family here.
Yeah. And you went to, didn't you go to a national conference last year? I mean, you must have seen a lot of people that were inspiring.
Yeah,
some amazing,
September I went out
National
to,
Dog Trainers, right?
Yeah, I went out to the IACP, which is the International Association of Canine Professionals. So mostly dog trainers, but there's some groomers and vets and other canine professionals in the as members. And that was out in Colorado, and that was like hundreds of people. And yeah, that was great. A lot of good speakers, a lot of people that I knew. Like their names, or I knew them, in social media, but I'd never met them. We're on a lot of the same like dog trainer Facebook groups, and so that was super cool. And just the passion, it just kind of reignites your passion to be in a group of other people that are so dedicated and excited about working.
And you
with
don't have
dogs.
to explain your own.
Yeah, and you don't have to explain why you're your kind of obsession and the fact that you could talk about dogs 24/7 because like. My fiance gets so sick of me talking about dog training some
So
days.
does my wife.
It's nice to have
About
people that
advertising.
they don't run out
Oh,
of,
boy.
being excited to talk to you about that stuff, So that was really cool. Yeah.
How about this question for you? With the business and what you do, was there a particular aspect of it that you liked more? And if so, why?
I got into this to train. Well, you think you're getting into it to train dogs, but really you train people to train dogs. So I'm a people trainer.
Well said.
I wish that I could do that more often. I think when you're a small business owner, you're also customer service, and,
Marketing,
accounting,
admin.
marketing,
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
you do it all.
Right.
Yep.
And so, more hours of my day are spent doing that than training people to train their dog. And but you do get to. I am a huge proponent of certification, national certification for dog trainers. I think there really needs to be a way for the average person to differentiate hobbyists from professionals. And one of the
Amen.
things that is a part of certification, and I think there's 6 or 7 national certifications, there's the component of 300 hours, usually in that range of actual mechanical training skills, and then there's a written exam that shows that you can demonstrate full understanding of the mechanisms of behavior change. But importantly, there's a continuing education component of it to keep your certification going. And so that's where conferences like the one Heather referenced, there's also the Clicker Expo, the Association of Pet Dog Trainers also has a big expo. And when you go to those things, I think, as Heather mentioned, it does sort of reinvigorate you because as you've been doing all this other stuff,
Right.
for that weekend, you can just be a trainer. And don't get me wrong, there's marketing info, there's stuff to help you support all that too. And, over there in the corners where you can get insurance and stuff like that. But you really do get to be a learner. And that's cool because you come back and immediately start putting that into play with your clients.
And I think that's important just for about any pet professional or pet professional. If you're hiring someone for a service, you want to ask them, how do you keep yourself fresh? How do you get inspired? How do you learn new things? I mean, I think that's really important to know how people are moving forward rather than just staying stagnant.
I love it. This question's coming in for the audience. Any tips for transitioning from a house with a backyard to an apartment?
Oh boy.
Are there stairs? Is it an elevator? Right? Because that's a big consideration. Is the person mobile? So sometimes when people move, we also go from house training outside to having to house train inside. So that can be a shift. And being able to prep in advance, I think it's great if you know the moves coming because, for example, if I have to train a dog on an elevator, I would rather have a month or two to do that and make that a great thing. And for some dogs, they'll pick it up faster than others. Then, well, it's happening this morning. And it's going to be happening this morning for the rest of your life, right? So
Wow.
I think having time like that can really help. Also, how are you going to exercise this dog? So I honestly think that if the common domestic dog got more exercise, I would be out of business.
Right. And for Heather, I think, how do you deal with things like the dog's in a new place and he's barking? Now you're in a place that's really...
I worked with a client,
Yeah.
and they were like out in Crozet, and they had land and they had acres, and the dog was like hardly ever on a leash because they just would go walking with the dog off leash in the fields. And they live now in the center. He works at UVA, and so they moved closer to work. And he's like, we live in the burbs now, and they have neighbors, and there's fences, and the dog. They were really concerned, and so we started working before. Thankfully, they knew enough to start working with the dog before it actually happened, and so we were able to set her up for a lot more success than if they just kind of, oh yeah, we're moving tomorrow kind of thing, which happens sometimes. But so things that we worked on were like getting her leash skills to be better because she just wasn't really used to being on a leash.
It's like fighting a marlin.
Yeah, and then the things that they started dealing with was the dog barks because there's so much more activity, cars going by and UPS coming by and the neighbors coming home, and those are noises that she wasn't used to having neighbors that lived a mile away. So those kind of considerations are really important, and just getting her used to the new house and the new setup. I try to, if you have the opportunity to bring the dog to the new house before you're going to be staying there. So if the house closes and you have a month, can you bring it a couple times and just play and do some positive reinforcement with the dog so they get used to the new setup of the house, maybe a new set of stairs, a new backyard, the smells that are going to be associated with the new neighborhood. So just trying to gently kind of get the dog used to those changes so it's not such an abrupt night and day from their old situation to their new situation.
And expanding enrichment opportunities.
Yeah.
Because, when I was a kid, you let the dog out in the morning, it came back at night, it was well exercised, it was well socialized, there weren't behavior problems.
Right,
Then we put
right.
fences in, and we radically changed our criteria.
And then
for
we
a
started
family
getting
dog.
obsessed with these and spending less time
That's
with
right.
our dogs.
Even before we got obsessed
Yeah.
with those, the second we put fences in and really changed the kind of dog is now a member of a family with different sets of criteria for expected behavior.
Yep.
Right, so we put more
Are
pressure
you
on
an
the dog.
anthropologist as well as a dog trainer? Because I love where this is going here. You're so right about this.
Well, I actually, my master's degree is in philosophy, so
There you go.
that maybe
boy.
explains where
There
I'm
she
coming
goes.
from. But yeah, so I think that there's big cultural shifts, and no one sort of alerted the dog, right? And the DNA of the dog wasn't necessarily prepared for that. So environmental enrichment and exercise, mental and physical exercise. We tend to think of exercise as only physical, but mental exercise. Food toys is a perfect example of this. Everyone feeds their dog. If you're feeding them in a bowl, it's such a wasted opportunity to provide fun, self-entertainment lessons for your dog.
That's a good idea.
And and the thing is that some of them you require effort, right? You can mix stuff for a Kong, for example, mix stuff in and freeze it, and so that's going to take a little bit of planning. But plenty of them you can just scoop or get the dog food right into the toy, and now you've got something that lasts half an hour, 20 minutes. It's a great management tool too, and you don't need any skill set for it. That's what I love.
Yeah, I have to share something. When you said about working with a dog in the city, I have a friend that's an animal communicator, and this little dog was really having a hard time on the downtown mall. I mean, it just barking at everything, not pulling on the leash, but just really offensively barking. And she made this person, she says, "I need you to lie down." What? She made her lie down on her stomach on the downtown mall on the ground, on the bricks. And she goes, "Now I want you to see what this dog is seeing from her point of view." And then she's like, "I had no idea." Well, come on, it's a little dog. Everything looks huge and big and scary, but it was just interesting here to see, how once she thought about it that way, she could think about working with her dog, from a different perspective.
The Temple Grandin
Yeah.
approach. That's what that really is.
The what?
Temple Grandin, who is the professor that has autism and has written some really amazing books.
Okay.
And she's designed 2/3 of the slaughterhouses in this country, and she designed them so that cows would not be stressed going into them. So there's a lot of curves. They don't see what's up
Squeeze
ahead. But there was one where they kept stopping, and no one could figure out why. She got down on her hands and knees, and there was a little foil that just happened to
Oh
be
my
catching the
gosh.
sun. And that's what was stopping everything. So when people change their perspective to more closely match what the dog's experiencing,
Right.
I love to call that the Temple Grandin maneuver.
I
Because
love that.
it goes out to Temple
Nice.
Grandin.
Remember that
She has
one.
some great books too.
She's super cool.
Yeah?
Really cool lady,
We have
yeah.
this comment coming in from Kathy Kravinsky, Maddie, and Nitro.
All right.
Say hello. We want to
Nice.
thank you for training our humans so we could be better dogs. Maddie enjoys her nose work, and Nitro still enjoys his therapy dog visits. They also enjoy their hikes on all the wonderful local trails. Love, Barry, and Kathy.
Nice.
Some other questions coming in that we will relay. Hello, Aaron King, Sandy Fuel, Vic Bright, Nikki Wooten Shameless, Crozet, Richmond, and Earlysville watching the program as we speak. How about the transition from the family dog, where it's just the couple and a dog, and a child comes into the play?
Oh, boy.
And then the attention is not
about-
just on the dog.
Whoa,
And then
Jerry.
the dog becomes second or third when they're used to being number one.
Because you have a
Right.
2-year-old now.
I
Isn't
do.
it?
I,
So you've
I'm
been
living
through
this.
this. So
With
Yeah,
two
just
German
recently.
Shepherds.
So what did you find most relevant?
So a tiger dog is a good dog. I focused on exercise and getting these dogs exhausted. I made sure to keep feeding separate from our son, especially when he was in the stage of just running up and grabbing dog bowls during dinner, which was scary as hell.
Right.
Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
I really made their crates a safe haven for them. So when they were feeling stressed, they had a little like hangout spot
Yep.
for
They
them
had
to
a
get
rec
away.
room that they-
Their own like man room, if you may.
Yeah.
It's
for
like
that.
a she shed or a man cave,
Exactly.
right? Exactly.
A chill place. And slowly we taught our son, who initially wanted to like grab and pull just because he didn't know any better.
Well, that's also where they're at in their development,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
They're
that's
they're
totally
grabbing
normal.
and
Pat,
pulling.
soft, and the dogs intuitively, and I'm going to get out of the way, you guys are the pros. The dogs intuitively knew that my wife was pregnant, and like we're like chilling next to her and protective of her, and like knew something was happening. And then now they're almost like a babysitter. It's a bit amazing. My son, I'm a dummy.
That's why dogs are awesome.
I'm a dummy. I left the basement door open, and the basement has 14 stairs down. My son sprinted for the basement when when I wasn't looking, and I was in charge. And my
Jerry.
German Shepherd sprinted and beat him to the stairs and blocked
Well
him from going
done.
down
Wow.
the stairs. It was
Attaboy.
amazing.
Well
Extra
done.
dog
Kept him
treats.
from falling down the stairs.
Saved your
Right.
butt.
He got ground beef that night.
Yeah, a little fillet.
How about
in
the
dish.
transition to parenthood when you have dogs and you're welcoming kids? That's a scary one.
It so depends on the dog, right? So behavior
Yeah.
is the study of one, and what any individual dog needs really depends on the setup. But I do like to have a quiet place, whether it's a crate, whether it's a room that's away from the activity that they can easily access. In other words, I don't need to help them access it. They can choose to go there. This is where I think socialization can really help when you have them, if you happen to have them as puppies, and even if you don't have kids, socializing them to the sounds and the noises. Because I find typically the baby isn't the problem, it's when the baby moves.
Yeah.
Because now we've got an alien creature.
On
that
eye
darts,
level, sometimes.
Eye level,
Yeah.
and
Making
prolonged eye
very
contact.
weird noises coming
Yeah.
from it.
Weird
too, yeah.
noises,
And they
prolonged
smell
eye
And it smells funny.
contact.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there. So those are
It's not a
things that
squeaky
you
toy.
Sort of, sometimes you have the opportunity, you have friends that have kids, and you can start working with that.
I messed up with that.
Well, I mean, you're juggling life, right? And so I have the benefit of having done this long enough that I know what the pitfalls might possibly be, maybe a little bit more than the average person, but my clients surprise me all the time. I mean, I learn new things for my clients all the time because their life changes in an unexpected way and the world changes. Like you said, I mean, now everyone at the dog park is on a cell phone.
Right,
Well,
they're
that
not even
radically
watching
changes.
the interaction. They're not.
There's no monitoring. There's no, any of that radically changes things. So, and it even happens in a puppy class. People are so interested in catching their puppy playing with other puppies potentially that they're really not participating in managing the puppy. And you've got to say, hey, that little thing needs your support. So I think transitioning goes slow. Definitely teach things like go to a place to, if
You're
you
big
need
on
to.
place.
I'm
Love
also
place,
a fan
yeah.
of, for new parents, teaching dogs to wait at the bottom or tops of stairs.
Yep.
So parents can go up or down first.
Especially when you're carrying
I think
fragile
that's-
That's a good tip.
newborn, yeah.
What do you think, Heather? Jump in here.
I mean, the best thing you can do is as soon as you find out you're expecting is start preparing right away. Don't wait until, we're going to give birth in a couple of weeks. I've had those calls and I'm like, oh gosh, I wish you'd called me 6 months ago. But preparing the dog, because it's a huge transition. Not only is there a new alien life form in there, that they're sharing their home with, but mom and dad's attention is going to be vastly reduced on them when they may have been the baby originally, and now there's an actual baby, and they may start to feel a little bit left out. So preparing the dog to, what sometimes people do is they spend extra time with the dog, when they're pregnant, and like kind of spoiling them even more. And then what happens is they have the baby, and it's such a drastic change. So it's like keep your routine. Don't like extra love your dog, love them the same amount, but start making sure that like if their training is really reliable, you want to be able to send them to a place, or make sure that you create that safe place. I'm a huge fan of like desensitizing to baby noises. You can do things like practice walking them with a stroller, practice them not jumping up when you're holding something in your arms, because a lot of your the first couple of months you're holding that baby. So when you're on the couch with a baby, the dog's not allowed to climb on top of you. Those kind of things. Start setting those boundaries. If you want to set kind of off limits, the nursery maybe initially you kind of gate it or start to create some space so that they're not allowed to be on all the furniture in the nursery. Just think safety first.
This might be a time too when the kids have to get off the bed, right? So there's so many people that have the dog sleep on the bed, and now they're having a baby,
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
the dog's had the bed for years, sharing it with their
Yeah.
humans, and now that's a big shift, right?
Yep.
So you got to prep for that. But I get the same phone calls of I meant to do this months ago, but the baby's coming next month. But having a baby is an overwhelming experience for a human being, and our culture doesn't support it at all.
Yeah.
Right? Like we live in a culture that doesn't support it.
Yeah,
So
and-
I understand how the dog unintentionally sort of gets shuffled as you're panicked preparing your nest for this whole thing to go down. And you might also want to think about the car, where the dog travels in the car,
Yes.
because if the car's in the back seat, now you're going to have the baby seat back there. Are you comfortable having the dog back there? Yes or no? Maybe dog's not going to be in the car the same time the baby is when the baby's really little, and that's okay too, right? So just sort of thinking about these things.
Well, this is a question for both of you. So if you're a young couple and you're thinking, well, we're just married or we're just dating now, but, maybe we'll, get together and we'll have babies or whatever, and then you bring a dog into the home at that time, is that when you should be thinking about things like that? Because I would think that if you've got a dog sleeping with you, and then all of a sudden, now the dog can't sleep with you, and there's this little person there that you're now creating a lot of jealousy with the dog, and then some behavioral things can happen as a stem from that. I mean, I was always taught as a horsewoman to be consistent every single time, and what you're going to decide what you're going to allow for the get-go. But I don't know if this is true with dogs. I mean, is it an easy adjustment for them
Dogs
to say?
are pretty adaptable.
Yeah?
That's one of the more amazing things about them, certainly more than their human counterparts. We tend to kind of stick to our guns and don't like change, and changing habits is hard. Dogs can make those changes, but it's not something that is easy for them to do. They don't just flip a switch and they're okay with stuff. You have to be consistent. When you
Right.
change the rules, if you decide to change the rules, we're expecting a baby, or we might be expecting a baby, you're not allowed in the bed, you need to be consistent,
And I heard someone say, rather than scolding the dog for being on the bed, take it into a positive way, saying like, I need you to be here.
So yeah, give
Yeah,
them another
being positive
option.
where they can be, show them where they
Yeah,
can
if
be,
they
rather
can't be
than
in bed, then give
saying
them
no for
another
somewhere
very
else.
nice place to be. They can have
Right.
their
Make
own
that
dog
option
bed.
dynamite, right? And
Yeah.
also, if they've been sleeping on the bed and now they can't, it's not really their fault that they want to get on the bed.
That's right.
But I think that in terms of planning ahead, yeah, structure helps, being consistent with structure. But as your life changes, what you want from a dog changes. I just got a
Exactly.
dog 2 years ago, a puppy. I hadn't had a puppy in, I don't know, 12 years. My expectations and where I spent my training energy is totally different than the puppy I got 10 years ago. I used to focus on obedience. Well, now I focus much more on handling and grooming skills. You know, I want a dog that can't wait to have their nails clipped. I want a dog that's happy as a clam at the
Thank
vet.
you.
Wow.
Going-
Yeah, I was just going to say, you must
Thank
love
you.
that.
I do.
No, I mean, I will tell you my proudest moment as a trainer was when this puppy demand barked to have his nails clipped. And most people would cringe at
Wow.
demand barking. I literally broke into tears. I'm like, this is my moment. This is exactly what I wanted.
How did you know the demand bark was for clipping the nails?
Because I did the nail clipping in a very specific place, and I just finished and removed him from the place, and he stood at that place and barked.
Get out.
And barked.
That's amazing.
And he was 12 weeks old.
Props to you.
Thank you.
That is
he was
great.
just, but I mean, it was, I was
Oh.
like, this is, but you know, 10 years ago, I thought I was supposed to be teaching sit and down and like all this other stuff. That stuff isn't really relevant in my life. Don't get me wrong. When people say sit, what they're really saying is stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
That's really
Or I want to show off for somebody because my dog can do
Look
what I say.
can make,
yeah.
right.
It's
I'm
vanity.
much more interested in life skills.
Yeah,
right? So,
real stuff.
Can you get up and down the stairs to get in my car? Because most people don't consider this about cars. They think because their dog can jump. That, you know, hey, my dog can jump on the bed, my dog can jump logs. When they're jumping into a car, it's a really short runway.
Right.
They've
Totally
got this
different.
momentum, and so I'm a huge fan of ramps and stairs. I don't care if the dog could physically jump it. It's much better skeletally for,
hips.
them, right?
Safer.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
from puppyhood, because I learned this the hard way. My husky eventually had really bad spinal arthritis, and by the time I needed to train her on a ramp, she wasn't comfortable learning something new and using her body in that way because she was self-protecting, right? So note to self, I got to teach this sooner. And
Love
that's
it.
one of the reasons why I not only teach nail clipping, but I also teach how to file their own nails on a board. Because when you can no longer pick up and clip, it really helps if they can just do it themselves. It also buys you time to really slow down and teach the clipping so it's a fun thing. And if they can file their own nails, you're rocking and rolling, right? So
Oh, I love it.
that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff I focus on now. I mean, people come to me and they're like, I want to teach a stay to a young puppy. And I'll
When
say,
do we
"Why?"
start learning the real training?
And I'm
you know?
like, what are you going to use stay for?
Like, this is so much more important.
And it's
trust
much
me.
more academic.
Yeah.
You know, most of those traditional things are a carryover from military training. They're not really relevant to where we're at, right? I would argue, and as someone that's got grooming in her life, that, hey, having a dog come in and be happy about that experience is going to have much greater impact than a stay with a food bowl.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, whew, boy, that would solve about 90%. It might take away all the nail trims that we do on a regular basis, but I'm good with that. You know,
There's
if
a million
dog's
other grooming things.
right, if a dog's happy and willing to let you hold his feet, he's your dog.
It's
you
so
you
rare
own the
that
feet.
it's so rare that when I
right.
meet a new client and I ask them
Right.
about like handling their dog and is there anything that they're uncomfortable with or they don't allow you to do. It's so rare when they're like, oh no, they're totally cool. I can do their nails themselves. I'm always like, oh really? Because it's so uncommon.
they're so
People
long.
don't spend the time when they're young or with a new dog to think that's
I also
important.
think it terrifies people, don't you? I feel
They're
like
afraid
people
they're
are
gonna
so scared
they're gonna bleed to death.
They're
if
going to
they
hurt
clip
the
them.
dog.
Yep.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's just as stressful for them, which of course the dog picks up on.
Yep.
And also
Yep.
when we train it, we tend to sort of train pick up, tap, put down, treat. Well, that's not how you cut a nail. You pick it up, you're looking in the light, you're trying not to get
Yeah.
the vein, and
Yeah.
you're fumbling around. It takes a while.
Yep.
You got to train that into it, right?
Right. For both of you,
got one
we have
too.
so many people come in that say, I can't brush my dog. He won't let me brush it, or he won't let me comb him. And for us, with all these, especially with all these doodle breeds, if you
Yeah.
can't, brushing the top does nothing. It pushes the
You gotta
mat
get the
down.
comb
But
down.
if you can't comb it out and take care of it, now we've got a big job that we've got to do. How do you teach that to a dog?
Usually one of my go-to ways is that like one meal a day. So for like the doodles that like they need to be brushed at home, there's you don't really have a choice unless you're gonna every 2 weeks just have them like shaved down as short as they can go. That's your only other that's your only other option really if you just can't do it. It's not a good option, but it's the only other option. I like to do like at dinner time, you feed them as you brush, right? So brush, feed, brush, feed. And so you do it like in little bits. You're not holding them down for 10 minutes at a time, brushing their entire coat. You're building up kind of their tolerance and you're also kind of counter conditioning that, hey, good stuff happens when mom gets the brush out or when dad gets the brush out. And they're starting to be more cooperative because they're starting to expect that like, oh, the food comes out, we're going to do that fun game. So
Okay.
it's a little bit more that way. I like to use a lot of food for
I
that
think
kind of
being
stuff,
proactive really matters too. What people don't realize, so Pavlov's experiment has been redone literally hundreds of thousands of times. And when you have a neutral stimulus, so when the bell rang, dogs that didn't have any experience with a bell and then it was followed by a food, they were drooling within 50 repetitions. It was really fast. He also ran the experiment where he rang the bell and he shocked dogs. So he formed a negative association with the bell first. And then he switched to food, and it took months for those dogs to drool.
Really?
So once you have a negative association, your work is much harder.
Right.
So I actually just brought a feral dog, a cat into my life 3 weeks ago. And a long-haired cat that's going to have to be, as you know, brushed.
Oh, boy.
And this cat has a lot of negative association about hands near her. Maybe no association, but she's not wild about it. But I knew the brushing was going to have to happen. And so, again, it's, hey, first just here's the brush. Oh, you noticed it? I'll throw you a treat.
Yep.
And now I'm just going to maybe approach you with the brush. Great, I'm going to throw a treat. So when you're doing counter conditioning, when you're trying to form a positive association, which is basically Pavlov, what's essential is that the stimulus causes the treat, not anything that the animal is doing. However, the animal's behavior determines the intensity with which you present the stimulus. So if you move with a dog comb and towards the dog, and the dog backs up, that treat that follows doesn't mean anything, right? You've already
you just
had the
rewarded
negative
the dog for
association.
backing up,
It's not
really.
rewarding because the dog's
Well,
in an emotional state of mind, right?
right.
So it's avoidance. But what you're trying to find is that sweet spot where, you notice the stimulus, but you don't feel threatened, so you have to do something about it. Because once you feel threatened enough to avoid, you've now created the opposite effect, right? So if I pull out a jar of peanut butter and a dog runs away, I know probably what's happened is people have brought out the peanut butter, gotten the
pill in
dog
it.
licking it, and then brushed or cut nails. So the peanut butter predicts something I'm not wild about, versus the something that I'm not sure about always brings something good into my life, right? So the order of operation actually matters. It seems very picayune, but it actually really matters. But doing it first, like I didn't test the cat because I didn't want to get bitten or swatted, but I didn't
Right,
test the cat.
right.
I'm also a trainer, I know.
Ooh, nothing
I said,
hurts
no,
worse.
I'm just going to start this right from the get-go. Let's make this great. So I think that really matters, and I think that's where trainers can really help people. I say in my because people say in my puppy class all the time, well, I can cut nails. The puppy doesn't care. Yeah, if you have a 9-month-old kid, they don't care if you clip their nails either. They don't have the wherewithal at that point. They don't have adult teeth or jaw muscles to take a stand and say no. Right? But in 5 months they will. So there's this really important period of time where they
Teenagers.
might or might not be comfortable with it, where I can tip it to a demand bark because I can't wait for it to happen. You know, I show up with clippers and my dogs are doing this. Yeah, that's the goal, right? I don't want a dog that tolerates it. I want a dog that loves it.
Yep.
Love it. This comment just
Nice.
came in. This is from Yvonne Mayerquin.
Yes.
I agree totally with your guest, Patty. There are things I wish I started doing with Coco when she was a baby, i.e. brush teeth, trim nails, and eardrops that I'm now having to do now. Good comment right there. Another question coming in, and this question is, Jerry, can you ask the guests if it's can you teach an old dog new tricks and train an old dog, or am I
Definitely.
too late in life?
Oh, heavens, yes.
Definitely. I mean, barring any, I say like if the dog is, so old that it's arthritic and physically isn't capable of a certain behavior, then that may be.
And this
a bit
comment
of a
also
limit.
came in, not to interrupt you, can you teach an old cat new tricks? My cat is 10 and hates being
I don't
brushed.
know. My cat's 16, and I just let her do whatever the heck she wants. I have a totally different opinion on cats than I do dogs. My cat runs the roost, but I'm sure somebody could.
Well, all earthlings. So this is where understanding, the mechanisms of behavior change, because all earthlings, whether you're a hermit crab, a cat, a human, a parrot, all earthlings run on the same behavioral mechanism. So it's figuring out for that individual what makes you tick. So, it's finding out with that cat, if your cat doesn't get, most cats are carb heads. They love carbs. So if your cat doesn't get a lot of carbs, and the only time they get a carb is when you're going to start grooming, hey, that's great, right? So it's finding first the feedback that not only they like, but they're willing to work for. People tend to use the term reward and reinforcer simultaneously. They tend to they treat them the same. They're not. A reward is something pleasant that happens. A reinforcer is something you'll work for, right? That strengthens behavior. So before you can teach anything, whether it's a puppy or a 10-year-old kitty that needs to be brushed. You got to figure out what makes you tick, and it might not be food. It might be a car ride. It might be a game.
Yeah, so I mean, again, back to horse world, I have a friend that will not let me give a horse a treat ever. He says, what happens if you don't have a treat in your pocket? And you got 10 treats right here, and that's what the horse likes. I mean, you can stroke them in a different way. But I mean, what happens if that's the reinforcement you're talking about? Like if you don't have a treat and I need you to do this behavior anyway and you happily do it?
Well, I mean, dogs are a little bit smarter than that, but if you build value into the behavior, so like nail clipping, for example, can then become enjoyable even in the absence of the reward because you've conditioned it to such a way where the activity is now enjoyable. So yes, at some point you can kind of wean off of treats and you don't always have to have it, present.
But we're also talking about two different kinds of behaviors. So there's voluntary behaviors, things like sit and down. I call those table manners. And food in that equation is potentially a reinforcer or a reward. When you're talking about forming a positive association, what you're trying to create is an emotional response. That's Pavlov. That's a very different use of food, right? And so when you're doing classical conditioning, if you don't keep pairing the stimulus with food, if the stimulus hasn't become feeling good, an emotional inducer of good feelings in itself, then you might have to bring back the food. With table manners, intermittent schedules of reinforcement are much more powerful. So they're stronger than if you paid for every correct response. It's why people play the lottery. This is well understood, right? So intermittent schedules of reinforcement
There's a chance
are
there might
ideal.
be something in it, but it's not guaranteed. There may be something there.
And
that's
think,
valuable.
if you know that every single time you ask a friend for, something, they give it to you, you start taking that for granted, right? If you're not sure, it changes your behavior in the request, right? You're a lot more polite about it. You think about what you're bringing to the party before you make the request, right? So intermittent schedules of reinforcement are powerful, but I think what I think is so important about what you brought up is the general public does not tend to differentiate motivation. And table manners, basic obedience falls under the heading of table manners. An earthling has to be in a pretty balanced frame of mind to care about what fork they use, right? If you're at a dinner party and someone comes in and holds a gun to your head, you don't care what fork you're using.
Right.
And so when a strong emotion comes into play, whether it's fear, whether it's hunting drive, right? When a strong emotion comes into play, you're moving into a different kind of training.
Calvin G. Smith, I so admire you, Heather, and what you're doing. That comment just posted on the feed right now. What time do you think it is?
3:30.
3:47.
Yeah, close to 4. Yeah.
This needs a part 2.
I know, we can do this for hours, absolutely.
I love
should
this conversation.
Yeah, I do too.
It was super, super easy. How about this? Give a snapshot of the business and how the viewing public can engage with your brands. Where, how, the who, what, when, where, why. Heather, why don't you go first?
We have a website, leadthewaycanine.com. You can also get us on Facebook.com/leadthewaycanine. We have an Instagram. You can also send us an email, leadthewaycaninetraining@gmail.com, and you can also get us on the phone. So pretty much whatever your mode of preferred contact is, we're there on the other end, waiting to hear from you. So.
And Deven.
Website, caninecampus.com, CANINE, not the K and then the 9. So email through there as well, phone as well. We're on Twitter. We currently have Facebook, but we're up in the air about keeping that in light of the political ad situation. So shoot us an email, give us a call, drop by. People drop by all the time. So our facility is on Westfield Road, right down the road from Freestyle, which is where most people are familiar with, and so people can drop in. We're there all day.
I love it. Patty Boden, Zeller. Patty Boden, Zeller.
One thing I want to mention too, and one of the reasons why we're doing it this week is it is National Dog Trainers Month, and the props go to both of you for doing what you do and being patient and making dogs better for families. And if you're taking lessons, wherever you're taking lessons, I just want to mention that at Animal Connection all this month till January 31st, we are doing a training treat special. It's buy 2, get 1 free. Ask your trainer what kind of treats they recommend. If we don't stock them, we will bring them in for you. But ask your trainer what they would prefer, or ask your vet which treats they would prefer that goes best with the diet that you're feeding. And go get dog training. If you haven't done it yet, go do it. It's fun.
I love it. Today's show was fun.
Yeah, we do need to do a part two.
Part two.
Absolutely. We could do part 3, 4, and 5 of this, actually.
You guys are good. Made it easy. We will archive, for those that are tuning in and asking, we will archive the show on animalconnectionva.com. We'll also archive it on ilovecville.com. Our team will take the audio from the show and turn it into a podcast on iTunes. The audio and visual will be on I Love CVille and on Animal Connection VA. For 30 days, we'll syndicate it across our network, which is 17 Facebook pages, 17 Twitter accounts. We have the third largest Instagram in the community, and an e-newsletter that goes out every morning at 11 a.m. to roughly 120,000 inboxes. This is What's Barking Local. It's powered by Animal Connection. 18 plus years. Patty Zeller.
Starting 19, buddy.
Starting 19 years.
Yeah.
Patty Zeller has built the water cooler of the animal community in Central Virginia. Go see her in McIntyre Plaza.
All
Take
right.
care, guys.
Yay. That was
Thank you.
fun.
It's fun.
Great answers, you guys.
I like it.
Made it very easy. Very, very easy.